Då ska vi få lyssna på en kille som är tysk. Han är en person som har, då säger jag det med riktigt grym koll på de tyska biltillverkarna och vad de gör för att haka på Tesla och vad de inte gör, kan man väl säga. Han är en flitig twittrare, han är en skribent, han är han skriver Fully Charge, tidningen och deras hemsida. Han har 8000 subscribers på sin YouTube-kanal och han följs otroligt många på Twitter, för där är han riktigt grym. Jag hälsar Alex Voigt. Välkommen. Hej Alex.
Hi everybody, great to be here. It's an honor. So actually I believe to have understood two words throughout the part of the presentation that I've seen, and I thought and I believe the last part was an introduction of myself, so thanks for that. So I see you guys in the room there. I would love to be there too, because it must be a lovely place, but unfortunately because of COVID I couldn't make it. So maybe next year or the year after, we will see. So first of all, big honor to be here. I will talk today about two things. One is technology, and the second one is competition, obviously around Tesla. But before I do that, just two sentences about me. So as you probably know already, or a few of you, I'm a so-called influencer. Some people call me an expert, which is both really odd for me because I don't feel like that. I just stumbled in this whole situation by being an investor from Tesla for many, many years now. Actually, I started in 2012, 2013. And in order to keep my investment safe, I started to investigate about Tesla a little bit more profound. My background is I'm a mechanical engineer by education. I've been working 20 years in the software industry as a consultant, as a salesman. I've seen, actually, I believe, almost every larger German company inside out in my career. And I worked also 20 years in supply chain management. So all of that came together here with Tesla and helped me a little bit to understand some things a little bit more profound. And I started, or I was asked actually to start writing articles from Clean Technica back in 2018. And I was surprised about the attention. And then I started to write for other media outlets. And then I jumped over to Twitter, where I'm actually almost every day. So some of you may know me. So that's just about me. So let's get started, because I realize we're a little bit late already here. So talking about technology is obviously a very big topic if we talk about Tesla in that context. And I would like to differentiate here a little bit, although it's combined in between hardware and software. So I guess a lot from you, or probably everybody, either owns a Tesla or has driven a Tesla. And if you imagine you go back to an ICE vehicle, you just realize what kind of very different experience it is. And that experience is just, expressed through the software and hardware technology that Tesla is using by starting with first principles. So driving that vehicle is a very different experience compared to every ICE, and also compared to every other BEV, which has mainly to do with Tesla has started to build the car around software, which is, by the way, something the German automakers are now trying to talk about. So you hear this from Audi, the CEO of Audi, Duesmann. He talked about, changing the internal organization to allow the vehicle to be built around the software, which is nice words. I would like to see the results. We haven't seen it yet, but at least I think he's making the steps in the right direction, which I cannot say from most automakers. So in other words, if you want to develop a BEV like a Tesla that's really successful, you have to make sure that you get the software right first. And secondly, you look in the hardware. But you also have to make sure both work well together. If you think about over-the-air updates, which a lot of people believed in the legacy automotive industry, which is a piece of cake, and this is not going to be an issue. But if we look around, the over-the-air updates that we see, for instance, from BMW and VW, are very, very much limited to certain parts of features and functionality, and are not as holistic and comprehensive as we are used to with a Tesla. And this has simply to do with the fact that most steering elements and systems in a normal vehicle within the legacy automakers are coming from suppliers. Volkswagen has 40,000 suppliers still today. They try to reduce that amount, but it's difficult for them. So the company is not even used to do software on their own. The portion of software that VW Group is developing on their own is below 10%. The objective is to go above 60%. So everybody who worked ever in software gets an understanding what that means, because this is not just about, getting the right people in to make the difference. It's also about changing the culture and the way you start developing something. And VW is simply starting to do first baby steps. And the results out of these steps we see in the ID3 and ID4 and other vehicles, which have, and I believe everybody has understood this now, a lot of issues around software. So when I talk about suppliers here from VW, their natural structure has been that they've been giving suppliers specifications what they need to develop, and this includes software and hardware. So you had easily between 200 and 600 different steering systems, independent systems, in an ICE vehicle within a VW car. So VW has now realized that none of those talk to each other. So these are different suppliers. So you have tons of different interfaces. So there is simply no way really to make them speak to each other, which is really something you need to have if you want to have successful over-the-air updates and vehicles that improve over time, which is another huge difference Tesla vehicles have compared to all other cars. So the entire business model is really different in terms of hardware, software. And, a lot of people are complaining about the Tesla vehicle is not well built. You have these panel gaps and paint is not cool and this and that, which is probably part. I mean, obviously I'm German. Germans are a little bit nitty gritty if it comes to all these small details in vehicles. So we love that. And if you look at a Tesla vehicle, a lot of them have, small issues here and there, which I believe is because Tesla didn't put a lot of emphasis in there. And the second part is mass production is really hard. So to have a really running factory where, vehicles are spit out every 2 minutes, let's say, and they are all flawless, is really hard and very difficult work. And German automakers, as well as other automakers in the world, have mastered that to a very high extent. The mistakes they do right now is that they believe that this is the most important expression or important factor if you buy a vehicle, and they overlook how important software is. If you look at the incumbent and legacy automakers and you just take a look at the board level, ask yourself how many software engineers are sitting there. How many people are there who are really responsible only for software, because the biggest portion of the experience driving a BEV is the software. You very quickly will realize there's none. I mean, even within VW Group, there was one person that was appointed for software and who tried to make a lot of changes within the group in terms of the organization and how decisions are made, and he was demoted very quickly. So the old structures and the people who are used to work out of the hardware paradigm, these people are still in charge, and they hinder these big corporations to change quickly. I think it goes a little bit better with, for instance, Porsche. So if you have a small company, you can change culture and organization more easily. It's the same with Audi, still a big company. And Mr. Duesman, the CEO, is really trying to make a difference and a change here. But it takes time. And this is time these companies do not have. So in terms of this constant development and changing a vehicle, a Tesla vehicle, this is this is a part of the DNA of Tesla in terms of improving vehicles. And most of us, we don't even know that. I mean, the cars change in terms of hardware and software all the time. But, legacy automakers are not used to that. They think more in this kind of, we have a model and then there's a refresh coming, and in between they do nothing. But once consumers understand the big benefit of having a vehicle that is improving over time, they realize the big benefit they have in such a, laptop on wheels. So I think one of the key parts here is a constant and very quick improvement that Tesla is initiating all the time and restlessly. So pace of innovation is all that matters, is a sentence Elon Musk wrote back to me on Twitter one day based on one of my articles, where I try to point out that at the end of the day, it all doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter how good your chassis are, how good your engineers are and software. It's all about how quickly and successfully you can innovate over time. And this is, of course, expressed in the technology we all experience and know. And this is a big difference. You have to realize that incumbent automakers are used to about 7 years from the first sketch of a new vehicle to deliver that car. And they are now proud in Germany with VW Group to have it in 5 years. But the situation is changing that quickly that I believe incumbent have really a big challenge and issue here. And startup software companies, or I would rather say automotive BEV companies that have a software DNA, they compete quite successfully. So listening to me here talking about technology, you probably realized I talk all the time already about competition, because no wonder having the right technology and developing the right technology right now is very, very crucial in order to succeed and, with your technology and with your market. And I'm switching now a little bit more on the competition side over here. And obviously being German, my big focus is the German automakers. So BMW, Daimler, VW Group is what I'm reading about every day. And sometimes I get inside information, but my benefit here is obviously I'm able to read everything in German and have a lot of information very quickly on hand and can provide this to the international, people who really would like to understand what's going on in Germany. So right now, if we look just at the numbers, and I believe numbers are facts and they help us in terms of understanding where they stand. The IFO Institute, which is a very highly recommended institute in Germany, lately told or made a study, and in that study they showed that in 2017, which is now almost 4 years, peak sales did happen with more than 93 million vehicles worldwide sold. And from that time, 2017 to today, the numbers went down, down, down. So every year there's less cars sold. And obviously this has a little bit to do with pandemic and maybe with, lately with semiconductor shortages. But this is not the main reason. I mean, there is a trend to go more and more into BEVs, and every year more BEVs are sold. So IFO Institute calculated that in 2018, so 1 year after peak sales, compared to today, all German automakers together just have 63% of the sales they had in 2018. So in other words, 37% of sales from German automakers disappeared in the last 3 years. So some of you who look at the current numbers and read about record sales from Daimler, BMW and Volkswagen Group in the first half of 2021 will be surprised to hear that yeah, this is true. But if you look at the global trend over the years, these companies are shrinking already. I'm about to release a new article today, probably at Fully Charged, as it looks like, hopefully today, maybe tomorrow, where you can read a little bit more about my thoughts around that, because the overlying issue I have is actually not that the global sales are shrinking. The issue is the German automotive industry represents about 800,000 direct jobs and 2 million indirect jobs in Germany alone. Think about that. So a huge portion of the GDP here in Germany depends on the automotive industry. But what I see is that the German automakers are shrinking in terms of overall sales. And yes, they increase the BEV number. This started already, obviously, last year, where all automakers are cutting costs dramatically. So there is a lot of, people fired or people motivated to leave the organization, which has led to reduced costs on a high level. And that, together with good sales in the first half of this year, has created, record profits with most German automakers. But the problem is, if you look at the numbers, we talk about round about 3.1 to 4.4% of the overall vehicle sales is represented by battery electric vehicles. So this is a very, very tiny, small portion of the overall sales numbers they are doing. And they need to grow faster. Let's, realize that the numbers they are selling right now are really, the level where they are coming from is really small. So you would expect much, much, faster percentage growth. Taking a look at VW Group, for instance, which again, presented record BEV sales in Q2, 75% of that sale is coming from Europe. We have, about 11% or 12% coming from China, and another 10, 15% coming from the USA. So, and if you look at the European market, and we are all Europeans, you know that we have, some startups like Polestar and other companies here, if you will, but, the big competition from Korea, from China, and also USA is not really present that much in Europe yet. We have some BEVs here, but there's still a big wave to come. So what I'm trying to say is, if you talk about competition in terms of Tesla, yes, incumbent automakers are producing more BEVs, they are selling more. But if you just realize that Tesla is, delivering and selling every single vehicle they can produce, you know that there is absolutely zero demand issue here on Tesla side. They are the biggest company in BEVs in terms of models, regardless where you're looking. And in Europe, and you probably know that, we are just talking more or less about the Model 3 here. So Tesla is number one with one model. Just think about it. So the Model Y is coming here to Europe actually next month, sorry. So we expect first shipment to Europe with Model Y from China, with deliveries scheduled already end of August and in September. And Model Y is going to be a very, very, popular form factor. We know this from the US and China, and there's no difference here in Europe. This is a crossover vehicle, SUV-like, which is really loved for many people. And yes, it's probably not going to be perfect, which compared to all German cars like Mercedes and BMW and Audi here and there, maybe some flaws. But at the end of the day, the total cost of ownership is lower. It's a fantastic driving experience, and one that is hard to compare to other, BEVs out there. So right now, talking about competition in terms of Tesla, leaves me in a situation that I differentiate a bit about Tesla, which, every car produced is sold already. And we have long waiting times, not only here in Europe, but also in other parts of the world. But if you look at the incumbent automakers, their competition is mainly their own ICE vehicles. So they struggle to catch up to sell enough. I know from sources within VW that they're right now, forcing their own managers who've been looking for an ICE vehicle as a company car, they are forcing them to take a BEV, an ID4 actually, which gives us an impression that they have an issue around demand. And we also know that they've been reducing, the cost for the vehicles dramatically, not by, better production, but just as a price tag. So you can lease ID3 and ID4 right now as a company for 130 to 99 euros a month. Think about that. So if I hear these numbers, I know that they are making a loss already with that vehicles, which is, putting these companies into a dilemma. On the one side, in order to create some sort of demand, they have to lower the price tag dramatically. On the other side, if they do that, they are making losses and they can't compete against their own ICE vehicles, which have a higher profit and are still, asked for in the market. We have in this year, record sales. And one reason for that is certainly that in the last year, 2020, because of the pandemic, COVID, people just couldn't go into a dealership. They couldn't buy a car and they couldn't get a car delivered. So a lot of these people have been waiting for this year to happen so that they can finally order their car, which is happening. So that's one of the reasons why ICE sales went up very much, but also, and that's obviously very positive, all of them have better BEV sales than last year. So I'm very critical, in particular about the German automakers, not because I hate them. I'm critical because as a German, our economy is depending on the success of that organizations. And right now, they make a lot of mistakes with cars and with software and with technology, which, is creating additional issues. Most of you know that, the Gigafactory Berlin will be, kind of a paradigm shift for most Germans and probably also in Europe. Not only that cars can be produced and delivered in Europe, it will be kind of, for Germans at least, a made in Germany car made from Germans, delivered in Germany and rest of Europe. So that is kind of groundbreaking and puts Tesla on a very similar level, like the other automakers. So if you ask me about the competition, I believe there will be Tesla on top. I have no doubt about that, in particular with the Model Y and later on with the smaller compact car. Secondly, I'm expecting that, startup companies from China, from Korea, and also US, with good BEVs will have very good time also in Europe selling cars. And part of them have this already, if you look at Kia or, Hyundai. But the legacy automakers gonna, in my opinion, lag behind, trying to compete against their own ICE fleet and production. And over time, there's a high risk that all of them are going to shrink. They're trying to shrink in a profitable way because you need to keep the stock price up in order to finance the organizations. If you think about VW Group has the highest debt of all automotive groups in the world with 260 billion US dollars. Just think about that. This is crazy. They need to finance this over time. So therefore, they will try their best to kind of, push BEVs to a certain extent. On the other side, they will continue to sell ICE. And if you open the newspaper and the media and you read about VW stopping ICE sales, you also have to read, the fine print. And the fine print is they are planning for, stopping that in Europe and in North America in 2030, 2040 latest. But they have absolutely no plans right now to stop ICE sales in the second and third world. So right now, VW is building a production plant in India. I've been reading about 3 to 4 assembly plants VW is building up in Africa. And they also plan to deliver vehicles from India to South America. I'm talking here about ICE vehicles. So there's no real plan to bring BEVs to these countries. And the justification from VW is, well, there is no charging infrastructure, there is no, green energy like in Europe. So therefore, it doesn't really make sense to go with BEVs in these places, which I doubt that this is the right approach. And I believe this companies thinking like that will lag behind further in the future. And the future looks a little bit critical to me. So that's actually what I wanted to talk about here in terms of technology and competition. I haven't even touched all points like full self-driving, for instance, which is going to be in terms of technology a game changer. So you probably have seen the one or the other video lately about full self-driving beta. And I've been in the US last year in September at Battery Day, and I had the opportunity to drive a vehicle with autopilot in the US. Obviously, I'm German, so I'm driving around in Europe with my autopilot in my Tesla Model 3 more or less all the time. But comparing this, it's really a step change. So in the US, even with basic autopilot, the software, if you will, works better. But the truth is, regulators here in Europe have, limited the abilities of the cars to a very high extent. And some people are saying, okay, this is because they want to hinder Tesla to be successful. Maybe that's true here and there in certain areas, but overall, I see that full self-driving beta is making huge improvements and leaps forward. And I'm very positive that that's gonna be another technology change together with the battery improvements we've seen already, or we are going to see with the 4680 cells, that is bringing Tesla, into a very new segment of demand. And all the other auto companies, and I really add all the BEV companies in here, are really lagging behind in that respect in terms of vision and where they want to go to. So I think I make a pause here.
If you have questions, raise your hand. But I have a question.
Sure.
What's the thing with delivery numbers from, for instance, VV Group? If they announce they are delivered 30,000 cars, how much of them is delivered to customers?
That's a very good and valid question. So VW Group has a history of counting vehicles that they deliver to dealerships too. So that happened in the past. Actually, they have been sued in the US before for that approach, because it's kind of bullshitting people who are looking at statistics, right? So what VW, for instance, did, and Greenpeace made a big study around that, and the study concluded that in between 25% to 57% of all VW BEVs have not been delivered in Q4 to customers, but to customers plus dealerships. Well, this 25 to 57% was dealerships and company cars. So VW has a lot of companies and they have a lot of company cars. So if they have a manager in the contract, you usually have a company car. And of course, VW can ask people to take the BEV instead of the ICE car. And they count that as a delivered car, and it's put in the registration as a delivered car, compared to Tesla, who really only counts cars that are delivered to real customers. So what I'm trying to say here is this, numbers are not correct. Latest numbers, and by the way, this is important news too. In China, VW brand only delivered, compared to the entire delivered vehicles, 1% BEVs. And the numbers for the ID4 and the ID3 is not delivered, so the ID4 announced from VW was 2,900, but independent web pages counted only 2,014. So 1/3 of the vehicles VW reported in China in Q2 has been delivered to dealerships, and we can expect the same here in Europe once again.
Thank you. One question. A question to you before. Power day versus battery day. Something about that?
Absolutely. I mean, this looked almost like a copy, right? So everybody has seen it, has seen kind of the same attitude. And you have to realize that most managers within VW Group are complaining that Herbert Diess talks every day about Tesla. And I got this confirmed from different sources. So he is really, and I have nothing against it, because a Me Too approach could help VW Group very much to be successful. The critic I have here is that most of what is presented at at the Power Day as well as the latest strategy session is just PowerPoints. So people have been written to me who work for VW who are really pissed because they say this is all made up. There is no content behind. And these people don't even know what they really talk about our own organization here. So Herbert Diess is talking the right talk. I really like what he's saying and, and the image he's giving. But within the organization, they are saying, there's nothing, we have not what is needed to deliver that. And there are a lot of issues in terms of execution, in terms of that strategy. So if you just look, for instance, one example, Power Days, they presented 6 different factories. They want to, start in Europe. Until today, there is not one of those has started. And actually, Northvolt from your country has stepped back from the partnership. And VW has started with a Chinese battery company now searching for a location in Europe to start a battery plant, one of the 6. The Salzgitter plant, battery plant, is still planned and they work on it, yes. But it takes years to bring this up and we all know how difficult it is. So long story short, there's a lot of talk and marketing and great PR from VW. But if you look at the fact, what they're really doing, it's lacking behind big time.
I have a question about, have you studied the Asian manufacturer like Toyota or Kia or Hyundai, how they are in profit per battery car?
So profit is obviously extremely important. No company will survive on the long term without any profits. And in order to, I'm a production engineer, in order to really create profits, you have, in the automotive industry, you have to produce models in the 6 digits. So 100,000, 200,000 vehicles is really kind of the low level in order to make profit by car. And if you look at the numbers from VW, you don't see that. What I believe is happening here is that, and I think you mentioned Hyundai and Kia, they are in a much better position. First of all, technology-wise, they are ahead of VW, in my opinion. And secondly, they are selling already big numbers also here in Europe. So, and they have a good reputation too. I mean, that's very positive. I don't have numbers if they are profitable, but I would be very surprised if not. Their cost structure in Asia is much better than that what we have here in Europe. Yes, you have to put logistics costs and taxes on top in terms of bringing these cars and vehicles to Europe and sell them here successfully. But still, at the end of the day, they have a better situation because they have some models that really sell well and have a good reputation. So I see this going the right direction there. In terms of profit for incumbents, I would say Taycan, the Porsche Taycan, which is selling very well and had strong numbers again in Q2 with 12.9% actually overall sales. So 12.9% of all cars Porsche sold has been from Taycan and BEVs, which is almost the same level like the 911. So I believe, and it's a high price vehicle, so there is space in there. And I didn't know in the early days the problems they had with logistics costs, but right now I believe that the Taycan has a good opportunity to be profitable soon. And the same is probably true for the e-tron. I mean, they have a lot of variants out there, but still the car is selling well. At the end of the day, it's not too bad. So I'm positive that they have a chance, at least I would say next year, to be profitable too.
Thank you.
We all want apps in our cars. Do you think that Google or Apple will be successful in cars, or will, for example, Volkswagen do this in-house?
So one thing I really didn't talk about technology here is that in a Volkswagen vehicle, it's not only 200 to 600 different steering systems that don't talk to each other. They have 3 different computers in the ID3 and ID4 product line, which has to do with the MEB. And these computers don't really talk to each other very well. So why I'm saying that? If you want to have external apps developed either from Google or from private people, showing up in your car, you have to have an integrated IT architecture that allows that. And this also includes the battery technology, because you need to have, the right power and energy in order to make this all happen. If you, for instance, look at all the big, great screens you see nowadays, which is often, 4 or 5 different displays behind a glass screen or plastic screen in a car, these are huge consumers. So battery technology is also critical for that. But back to your question, I absolutely believe this is going to happen sooner or later, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to happen sooner with Tesla and later with everybody else. But I believe it will come. It adds another level of complexity in terms of software and a whole bunch of issues too. But as you are asking it, a lot of other people are asking for that as well. And it's only a question of time until we're going to see that.
Thank you. I think we should stop there and say many thanks to Alex. We see you again in a couple of hours. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for the good questions.